HBO found a huge breakout hit seemingly out of nowhere with Chernobyl, a 5-episode miniseries based on the real-life nuclear disaster. I'm Elizabeth Wagmeister here with our TV critic Caroline Framke. Now, Caroline, what made this such a huge breakout hit? Why was there so much hype around it?
So it premiered at Tribeca in April, and then I think ever since then, every week there was sort of more buzz and more buzz. It was a real word-of-mouth hit. I know when I watched it before anyone else had seen it, brag, that I was looking around going, I think this is amazing, but sometimes you want some confirmation. Mm-hmm. And then the reviews started coming out, and the reviews were glowing, and then more people started finding it and got really involved, which is really interesting because, like you said, this is a scripted depiction of a real-life disaster, mm-hmm. and you'd think you'd pretty much know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no spoilers in a thing like this. Like, you know what the end game is, but the show is really smart about this. You're following the same three people, played by Jared Harris, Stellan Skarsgård, and Emily Watson. Jared and Stellan are playing real-life people, and Emily was enlisted to sort of play a combination character of the scientists who came in to really sound the alarm about just how catastrophic it was.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like then her character is somewhat fictionalized, but mm-hmm. how true to the real story does the series stay?
It's something that the writer Craig Mazin thought about a whole lot. He even has released podcast episodes with each episode corresponding to really explain what they changed, the sort of narrative liberties they did take, but he, as he says, the truth is surreal enough. He didn't really have to bend it, and there were so many things in the show that you're watching and you're like, there's no way that happened, and then you look a little bit into it and you're like, oh, it was even crazier than it looked on screen. So it's one of these stories that you think you know, mm-hmm. You've heard a little bit about it, you know the basics, you know that it was really bad, but then you start unpeeling these layers and you realize just how bad it was, and also all the ways that it could happen again. And I think that's a big part of why it struck such a chord, because as Mazin has said a lot himself, he wanted to tell this story because he saw a lot of parallels between how the Soviet Union reacted to Chernobyl and how you see some governments now not being forthright about what's going on, just in general. Mm-hmm. So I think it really resonated with audiences that way.
You didn't see graphite.
I did.
You didn't. You didn't! Because it's not there.
Well, in your review, you wrote that in a way it feels like a horror film.
Yes.
Rather than a drama, and it sounds like from what you're saying, that's because there's fear innately instilled because it was a real-life event.
I think some of the scariest horror movies there have been are ones that happen because of just basic human error, mm-hmm. right? It's just some human somewhere was selfish or violent, and it just resonated in a way that no one could see coming, and that's so much what Chernobyl is. So much of it is just basic pride and greed running rampant, and that's one of the biggest horror stories there are. But even the way it's filmed feels very reminiscent of a horror story. The director, Johan Renck, who directed some Breaking Bad, he directed a lot of music videos, including David Bowie's final videos, See Lazarus and Black Star. They're very eerie, and he filmed a lot of Chernobyl the same way.
IMDb actually just released that Chernobyl is the top-rated IMDb TV series of all time, beating
Wild.
Breaking Bad. What do you think the potential is for Chernobyl going into the Emmys and then the Golden Globes?
I think it's really well positioned to sweep some awards categories. Mm-hmm. The limited series category this year is extremely stacked, but Chernobyl has the leg up of having aired right before the Emmy nomination window is closed. So
Top of mind.
Top of mind, which is super important, especially given how much TV there is in general. So I think it's got a really good shot, which is, like you said, really good news for HBO. They have clearly been a little worried about people abandoning the service since the end of Game of Thrones, but I think Chernobyl showed that sort of they're still really good at what they do. It's sort of the perfect marriage of like their documentary and their drama instincts, both of which have served them really well. And that audience is still there, clearly.
And the other thing that it proves is that you never know where the next hit is going to come from. And of course, HBO, they've gone through many different eras of huge iconic shows going off the air. They've always been just fine. They have Big Little Lies Season 2 that just came out. They have Watchmen, so they're getting into the comic genre, and they also have Euphoria, so they're getting into the teen genre for the first time. So HBO will be just fine, but Chernobyl was a big kind of surprise, being a breakout hit.
Yeah, and I think it goes to show that you, like you said, you never know where the next hit's gonna come from, and you also don't know what it's gonna look like.